Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me, with or without a degree. Don't question my intensity, bravery. Similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Pray for me. Einstein with my energy.
Welcome to the Scribbled Notes podcast. I'm excited. How are you today?
I'm good. This is just wonderful. I'm glad that we were able to link up.
For real. Why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners? Talk to them a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Athens Pellegrino, and I am a military spouse of 12 years. I also work for the Air Force, but as a civilian, I'm a budget analyst. And recently I just started writing children's books, and that's a passion of mine now. And it's just something that I've really gotten into, and it's taken off. And I never in a million years would have imagined that it's something that I would have done, but it's great.
How did you get started with writing?
So it actually started during once the pandemic started. We were living in Montgomery, Alabama, and everything was shut down, and my son's preschool no longer was open with me. And I was just trying to think of creative ways that I could occupy his time. So I pretty much read every single book that we had in the house to him over and over again. And then eventually decided that it was time to try to create a story which I can include him in, because I just thought that would be something cool to do. We also found out that we were going to be relocating to the Tampa, Florida area. So at this point, I just figured, why not write a story about moving that involved my son Atticus and just get him excited for the move.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I also started writing. I write medieval fantasy. And
that's cool.
I started writing during the pandemic as well. My brother and I, we co-authored a book together. And we didn't get that started until the pandemic. I think just having some time to look at everything else and then having some creativity kind of bottled up really helped, at least me, want to jump into that space.
Absolutely, because I just felt like the world kind of slowed down. So it was finally time that I could do some self-reflection, see what was important to me. And obviously my family is very important. So I wanted to create something where I can include them in as well. And it just so happened that the stories that I started to write also help other families. So, I mean, I couldn't ask for more.
Yeah. How, what's your process been like? Let's talk a little bit about start to finish, what it looked like writing your book and how you went through that entire journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I originally just wrote down a short little story on literally a notebook, like a little college rolled notebook, and I would read it to him. And he was super young at the time, so he got super excited over every little part of it. But I told my family, I told my mom and my dad and some close friends about the story, and it kind of piqued their interest. We're just like, hey, this could be actually useful. Would you ever want to go further with it? And at the time I was intimidated because I didn't know the process of writing a book, and I didn't have a mentor or anyone that I could ask questions to, and I just didn't know where to begin. And on top of it, pandemic's going on. It's crazy. I was pregnant with my daughter Callista as well, and we found out that we were going to be moving to Florida. So it was just, I was like, all right, let's see what we can do here. So I basically at that point I added on more as we were going through the actual process of moving, and just things that were happening, I would jot down okay, the movers packed up our whole house, so we now are camping in the living room. I would just make little footnotes I wanted to include in the story. So then once we finally got down to Tampa, Florida was definitely a lot more lenient during the pandemic, that we were able to go out and about a little bit and get settled. And Atticus was able to at least go to preschool. And Callista, we moved to Florida 7 days after she was born. So just dealing with that whirlwind and being up all the time with the newborn, I had the time again to be able to fine tune how to research, how to get the book published and distributed and everything like that. So then those were the next steps where I had to think about how I wanted my illustrations to look and to connect with the illustrator. And luckily I linked up with my illustrator through a mutual friend, a friend of mine from high school, and she lives in Colorado where he did. And we linked up, and our personalities and goals and everything just meshed together really well. And from there, we just came up with the storyboard, and just from trial and error of researching how to self-publish and how to distribute. And my undergraduate degrees in marketing, so that's something that's always interested me. So at this point, though, I had to figure out like different media that I wanted to use. Like before, I wasn't really using social media nearly as much as I am now. And I just had to figure out how to get the product out there and to distribute it into my target audience and link up with media outlets and everything. So it's been a lot, and it happened very quickly, I must say.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I was gonna ask, what was that mindset like for you when you were pregnant, also moving, also trying to write your story, and then like going through all that at the same time? How did you keep yourself sane?
I think I just went into a fight or flight type mode and just started operating on autopilot. And it was one of those things, since I was up with my daughter like every 2 hours, I was just like, I might as well be productive with this time. And there's only so much that I could do in the middle of the night when everyone else was sleeping. So I had to think of something that I could do, which would be quiet, and absolutely doing the research on getting the book published and everything. That was the time that I did it. During the day, I am a budget analyst for the Air Force. So that can be pretty stressful at times. And it was just a nice outlet for me to be able to have that I could do something creative and have fun with it, and I can actually explain it to my family, whereas I'm sure they don't care about the Air Force's budget or anything like that. So
yeah, it's so cool because I obviously like it's just taking on something entirely new. That I know that process start to finish of publishing a book and actually going to like getting it printed and then needing to market it and needing to figure out all these nuances, formatting, and you're working with an illustrator trying to figure out like what is the best way to do all of this. There's so many moving pieces, so it's crazy because so many people don't necessarily know how much it is that goes into actually publishing a book and putting it out to the world.
For sure. And you have to be super detail oriented, like just even things like the formatting, that was just a whole hot mess of many errors, and then finally got that right. So luckily by the time the second book came out, we kind of had it down to a system more. So that timeline was a lot easier. And we're in about 3 weeks, we're moving to Japan. So I'm going through that. And I also just had another baby 3 months ago, Ella.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So I'm going through that along with my job search for the Air Force. It's just like, here we go again. So this time though, however, I am participating in a collaboration for an adult audience instead of a children's audience. And I can't really speak on that too much, but it will go into more of like my life story and how like the past year has been super difficult for me. I lost my mother, who is my best friend and biggest cheerleader. And, just a lot has happened. So I want to get that out there to people too, to know that they're not alone when they're in those types of situations, and ways to be able to stay motivated and everything.
Yeah, it's incredible. Just even hearing all of the various things you've had to deal with and the ebbs and flows of life over the last just 2 years is crazy. But it's a testament to saying like you are someone that can do it, right? You're able to get through, and I think that gives a lot to other people to kind of know that exists. I know there's a ton of people who even as being pregnant, my wife, she was pregnant last year. Our daughter's turning 1 year old next week.
Oh, congrats.
So it's crazy, but I know she has a podcast, and she was running her podcast, and she was doing a whole bunch of stuff for her business too. and just seeing her being able to balance all of those things, becoming a new father and trying to balance work and still doing this and still writing and publishing a third book coming up soon.
Oh
I know
man, yeah.
it just becomes a lot. So it's definitely impressive whenever I see someone that's really putting in effort and making time for it, because I think a lot of us look at the world as if we don't have time. And I think you even just talking about researching at night, right? Waking up at night, being up anyway, and like using that time for something. I think it just shows how dedicated you are to really making sure it works.
Oh, thank you. And also too, it's just like one of those things that I looked at it, like, for example, with my daughter being up all hours of the night and everything like that, I could either have meltdowns and just be unproductive, or I can do something that's positive and it's still healthy and everything. And, you know, also with the loss of my mother and stuff like that, like, I had two options. You know, I could have went through a downward spiral, or I needed to move kind of forward as best as I can and be there for my family and be there for others. And I know that that's how my mom would want me to be. She wouldn't want me to, like, you know, be completely depressed and devastated and stuff like that. So it's just finding ways to ultimately, like, still be in a positive mindset, even though, like, life happens and it's hard. But, you know, I want to be there for other people and to let them know that when they go through these points that are inevitable and they're going to happen, that, you know, there's other people that are in the same boat.
Yeah, it's there's a path forward.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about what the reception to your book has been. What has that been like for you? Getting feedback, hearing people's thoughts. What was it like the first time you started seeing other people reading what you wrote?
It's mind blowing to me. Like, I still haven't had time to really, like, process it. I don't know if I ever will, but, like, I never would have imagined that I got an Amazon bestseller. I've been on, like, pretty much all of Tampa's media outlets on the news. I've even been live, and I had no idea that it would come to this level that it has. And for instance, we went to lunch with some new friends last week, and one of the friends said that they bought the book before they even knew who I was.
Oh,
I was just
my
like,
gosh.
like, how does that happen? So I'm honored and I'm humbled by it, and I still have not processed it. So yeah.
It's incredible, because when you really think about it, it was you taking a step, you putting yourself out there, being willing to share your story with others, and then feeling comfortable enough to do that. I was actually thinking about I did a podcast last week, and I was talking about, like, just being willing to, like, put yourself out there and not be so concerned with how people will perceive you.
Yeah.
So you took the title of author, which is a hard title to hold.
Yeah.
And now that is you. So what's that been like?
I mean, it's just like, even like growing up and stuff like that, I would have never imagined that I would be writing children's books, or even now, like, writing in a collaboration. I don't know, it's just crazy to me. And I honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm still pretty overwhelmed by it all. Like, it's definitely exciting, and I'm really happy that I have the opportunity to be able to do it. So,
what's some advice that you can give to some people who are listening right now, who might be going through similar things that you went through?
for me, I would say you got to look at what is important to you in life. And I use this throughout all aspects of my life, like being a military spouse, working for the Air Force, everything. So for me, my family is like my number one. They're the most important thing, everything else secondary. So I know that, for example, for my kids, I want to be a good role model. I want to teach them to go after their dreams and to be inspired and to be as good as people as they can to be in society and to help others. And, you know, I want to be a living example of that for them. I don't want them to be afraid to go out and try new things. I don't want other people's opinions knocking them down. I want them to have confidence. Like, that's what my mom did for me growing up. So I certainly to make that a priority for them. So I say just look at your morals and your values and what's important to you to begin with, and then just constantly try to develop yourself. And it's something that you do day by day, just little tiny things. Like even if you can make 10 minutes out of your schedule toward yourself, whether it's you're listening to podcasts or it's like prayer or it's exercise, whatever you have to do to be more well-rounded and to be the person that you want to be, start off that like little by little and chip away at it. And if you start, then you'll start seeing patterns, I think, at least for me, that I was just like, okay, like writing for me is actually relaxing me. You know, I can't say that my day job is relaxing at all. They're probably going to listen to this and be like, oh, gee, thanks. But yeah, that was something that would relax me. And I was just trying to think of how can I do something that I genuinely love doing and getting that out into society and, you know, having my kids be proud of me for what I'm doing. So
that was powerful. That's powerful. It is making that space for yourself, doing things that take care of you, setting that example. There's so many things that you can do. I think that's great advice. That is great advice. Thank you. So where can people buy the book? Where can they find it? Where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so they can purchase the Military Child Chronicles series. I would say Amazon's probably the best right now because we also are shipping overseas that way. But through Barnes & Noble, online, Target, Walmart, Goodreads, and Books A Million, and also through my direct website, the Military Child Chronicles at wordpress.com. There's a link there to be able to purchase it. And I am on Facebook and Instagram as the Military Child Chronicles.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the way you run the business. Can you talk a little bit about the way you've kind of packaged the Military Child? Like, what does it look like day to day for you?
So day to day, like right now, I'm actually on maternity leave, which is pretty great because it's letting me set myself up for the next few months while we're in transit to Japan. So usually like what I'll start with is I'll start with like my monthly calendar and look at what events I have that I need to be at in person and to ensure that I have childcare coverage during that. And that my calendar also syncs up with my husband's. And then from there, I look at the podcasts that I have lined up for the month or any kind of just interviews that even if they're like through email correspondence, and I set those dates and those deadlines. And what I've been doing recently, which I didn't do before, is I've been trying to plan a few weeks out of my social media content so that it's already scheduled and planned and it's not something I have to sit there and think about. But I scheduled pretty much all of my August. So as I'm going through this move, I have the opportunity to focus on creating new content and to get out there. I've definitely been through breaks with the newborn baby. Now I've been trying to research on how to better use like Facebook Business Suite and Instagram. And eventually I'm going to have to get into TikTok, as much as I don't want to, because I feel like I'm just doing too much social media right now, but it's got to be done. And I'm researching the media outlets that they have in the area of Japan that we're moving to as well, and trying to establish contacts out there.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's a lot, and it makes sense to really try to organize that. I think one of the more daunting tasks, right, is actually organizing all of the other things that aren't writing.
Yeah. I'm just like, the writing part's easy. It's all that, because I'm just like, how do I make a reel? Like, let's Google this. So, but and before I wasn't really social media savvy. I kind of just stayed off of it and would just occasionally post. But now I feel like I'm posting something every day. So for me, that's a huge step, and it's something that I definitely have to carve time out of my schedule to focus on, and it's a big aspect of the marketing plan.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, energy, a lot of thought. It's funny because when some people think of social media, they're like, oh, you can just post anything. And that's not the case.
Nope.
That is not the case. Everything needs to be thought through and have purpose and intention behind it. So it becomes so much more than just the writing. which is honestly for me always the most fun piece. I was just talking to my brother earlier today. I finished the third book, and he finally read through the manuscript. So he's just got to the end. And we were like talking about the story and the culmination as a trilogy. And I was like, this is the most fun that I'm going to have with this story. Because when September and October come, it's all business. It's all moving. It's all just trying to get this thing to as many people. When are you going to launch it? I think it's going to come out sometime in the fall this year.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
So it'll be fall this year. The trilogy will be complete. But then it's we're getting hardcovers for all 3 books. We're getting audio books made for 2 more of them. The first one already has one. There's like so many little things that are coming together. Your to-do list keeps
it's crazy, but it is fun.
It's fun, and it's cool because I work in higher education, so I work at Quinnipiac University, and I deal with campus activities, so I do events all the time anyway. But doing them for my own business and my own book and for the podcast and things like that, it is very different. So it does scratch an itch, I guess, that is very different, a different side of me.
And it can be scary and daunting too when you're like, all right, this is falling back on me. Like, this is my name attached to this. I invested this much money in this project already. Now I have to do it. Like, it can definitely be daunting.
Yeah, but the success is always worth it. I always like to tell people that it's like the feeling that you get when you get that copy of your book for the first time, and you get to hold it in your hands.
Yeah.
There's very few feelings like that. It's like, oh my gosh, after all this work, it's done.
Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing.
So can you leave us off with any like final words of wisdom as we're coming up on the end of our time?
Yeah, I would just say, again, I'm going to reiterate, think about what's important to you, your morals, your values. And if you have a dream, go after it. You're not going to know unless you try. And there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, but you just got to keep getting up and keep going, move forward, go after your goals.
We love that. Thank you so much for making time to come on the podcast. I've definitely appreciated this conversation. For the listeners, make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a review. We definitely need reviews on the podcast. I've noticed a big uptick in Spotify, especially. So people clearly are listening on Spotify. So make sure you're doing that for Apple Podcasts too. And you know what it is. I'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Thank you.
Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me. With or without a degree, don't question my intensity. Bravery, similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Einstein with my